Wednesday, April 26th to order, and we do have a quorum. Good evening, everyone. And I'd like to start by mentioning that we do have a new member who is not present today, but it is Mr. Chadwick Weiler, who will be representing Pleasant Hill. And so he will be present at our May meeting. I would at this point ask for public comment, but I see that there isn't anyone in the audience, so I will move on to the second portion of the agenda, and I would like for a motion to approve the summary of action. So the City of Orinda, Mark Roberts has moved for approval, and I did see the City of Antioch initially do for a second. So I've got a motion for approval, and I do have a second. So all of those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed and abstentions. So it does carry. Thank you. If you would review the attendance log, which is attached, and if there is any revision that needs to be made, please let Diane know. You will note in the attendance log that Richard Means, who was representing the City of Pleasant Hill, he did resign, and that's why we have another member who will start next month. Any issues for the attendance log? Please note the meeting calendar. Our next meeting is scheduled for May 24th. And if you will please note your committee roster, we check your name and make sure that your contact information is accurate. And I would like for those of you to check to see when your approval date is expiring. And if you are so interested in continuing on the Citizen Advisory Committee, you will need to contact your city clerk through an email, written documentation, and then they will in turn inform Diane and Martin if that's the case. And we do have some people who need to contact their city clerk, please. So we keep you on the roster. The first portion of the agenda is the major discussion, and we have in front of us the El Cerrito calendar year 2014-2015 Growth Management Program compliant checklist. Do we have the City of El Cerrito's representative? Oh, there she is. Okay. We'll wait. And you are Yvette Ortiz? Okay, welcome.
Good evening, committee members.
Good evening.
Yes, I am El Cerrito's representative. My name is Yvette Ortiz. I am the city's Public Works Director and City Engineer. So thank you for the opportunity to highlight some of our the items we've completed as part of our Measure J Growth Management Program. Overall, during this reporting period, the city has continued to satisfy Measure J requirements in all areas of growth management. The city actively participated in the West Contra Costa Transportation Advisory Committee, which is our sub-regional Management Agency. We continue to meet the goals of our housing element. In terms of affordable housing, the city has been in the process of developing and completing affordable housing projects. In 2005, the Ohlone Gardens project was completed, and it was 57 units of affordable housing. Right now, under construction is the Creekside Metro project, which is a total of 128 units and includes 6 units for very low income and 13 moderate income housing units. And that should be completed and open for occupancy by this summer. In addition, just last week, the city broke ground, well, not the city, but the city in partnership with Eden Housing broke ground on a 63-unit affordable housing for seniors right next to City Hall. So we're all very excited about some of the affordable housing projects we've been able to move forward in the last few years. In terms of this 2-year reporting period, one of the most significant actions that the city completed was adoption of our San Pablo Avenue specific plan, which was a document that helps create a new vision for San Pablo Avenue, which is basically functions as the city's main street, but is also a state highway. So it's the plan is intended to re-envision San Pablo Avenue into a multimodal corridor that's not just for thoroughfare, but also livable, workable community. So that specific plan included a form-based code that incorporated the most current strategies for transit corridors, including higher density, reduced parking minimums, and various, or also flexible ground spaces, so not just commercial, but also residential uses on the bottom floor in our commercial corridor, just so that because it's a 3-mile corridor. So that was adopted in 2014, and it included a general plan amendment, which we circulated per our action plan. And in total, it includes 1,700 new residential units and 240,000 square feet of commercial. And the trip generation for that overall development and build-out conditions is net new approximately 700 AM peak hour trips and close to 1,600 PM peak hour trips. The other notable accomplishment in the last 2 years was that the city began the development of our active transportation plan, which is an update to the city's circulation plan for pedestrians and bicyclists. Another thing that we continue to be proud of is that in 2008, the City of El Cerrito voters passed the half-cent sales tax for street purposes, which enabled the city to transform our pavement conditions from one of the lowest in the Bay Area, bottom 3, to the top 3. So our pavement condition right now is in the mid-80s, and it's really, which is top 3 in the Bay Area. And again, that was, we were able to do that because of the half-cent sales tax that voters passed back in 2008. And overall, that money has helped us leverage federal and state funds, and we completed 3 significant paving projects in the last few years. And in terms of, we have had no changes to our transportation systems management ordinance or urban limit line or growth management element since it was adopted in the previous reporting period. And that's basically it. I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Those of you who have questions, Mark?
Does the AC Transit Express bus line extend?
Mark, excuse me. Thank you.
Sorry. Does the AC Transit Express bus line that runs through Oakland and Berkeley extend up San Pablo Avenue into El Cerrito?
Yes, the AC Transit, it's the AC Transit 72 Rapid. It's not necessarily in an exclusive bus lane, but it does have transit priority at traffic signals and a couple of queue jump lanes in the corridor.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
If San Pablo Avenue, I haven't gone down that street before, but if it's a state highway, I'm curious, and you guys are generating 700 to 1,400 new, cars on that road. Mm-hmm. How are you guys mitigating those additional traffic?
So we did look at traffic levels of service, and we're maintaining the level of service threshold of E on that corridor. And Caltrans did review the environmental document, but also one of the things that we did as part of the specific plan was to develop multimodal performance measures. So we're also looking at levels of service for pedestrians, bicyclists, and transit. So that was part of the overall specific plan and Complete Streets plan, and was a part of the evaluation for the EIR.
Yeah, so maybe this was a question for Martin really quick. Per Measure J, what is the lowest level of service that a city can go before they're required to create an action plan in order to raise that level of service? Because it's
I can
E,
start
which is
in
kind of just above F, you know?
So level of service E is established in the sub-regional action plan, which is West Contra Costa Transportation Advisory Committee established an LOS East threshold on San Pablo Avenue. It's a route of regional significance, but it's an accepted threshold, and we're not going beyond that.
Oh, okay.
Other questions or comments?
Thank you.
Yvette, I wanted to comment on the fact that your city won the, what is it? The 2015 Best All-Around Pavement Management Program. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I was very impressed when I read that. That had to be some feat.
It does recognize basically the effort that we were able to do with the half-cent sales tax. And so we have been able to maintain that level of effort because the half-cent sales tax has no sunset, recognizing that maintaining your roadways is forever.
Right, and San Pablo Road is extremely congested. So along the lines of what your comment, I think to myself, wow, the bicyclists riding down that road, that's very tricky mitigating that.
So we didn't reduce any of the vehicle travel lanes. We're still maintaining 2 in each direction. But in segments of San Pablo Avenue, the right-of-way is extra wide. And so we were able to narrow travel lanes and parking lanes to add a protected bikeway. And the protected bikeway is basically between the curb line, the sidewalk, and the parked cars. So the parked cars buffer the bicyclists.
I have another comment also on the Safe Routes to School assessment, encouraging students, this is your middle school, encouraging students to walk to school. And so we're looking at 6th to 9th graders.
The middle school is actually 7th and 8th graders.
7th and 8th graders. So 12 to 14-year-olds walking to school.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very busy boulevard.
So the kids, the busiest street that the kids would cross is Richmond Street, not San Pablo Avenue. Although a lot of the kids do take AC Transit to and from school, and the AC Transit bus does travel on San Pablo Avenue. But the busiest street that they'll cross on their walking routes is about 6,000 vehicles per day, and we are going to be adding some pedestrian crossing enhancements due to that technical assistance that was provided by the CCTA.
So you'll have, gosh, I just went blank on what I was, people who help the children cross the street.
Crossing guards.
Thank you.
There won't be crossing guards. What we were able to secure grant funding to install enhanced crosswalks, meaning enhanced ladder crosswalks and double-sided pedestrian signs on the side of the road, as well as the paddle signs that you see in the center of the road to highlight that crossing.
Okay, so those will be lit when the children are crossing the street?
They're not lit.
They're not lit.
They're not lit. Maybe that might be a next phase, but in terms of the phase 1 improvements, it's just the enhanced signing and markings. And we'll have to observe pedestrian and traffic behavior and see if that's a second phase that we'll need to implement at a later date.
Other comments or questions?
I'm actually really interested in this housing successor, a low to moderate income housing asset fund. So can you explain what is this? I read it, but I don't quite understand what it is. It seems very interesting to me.
So I might not be able to answer your question, but if you can direct me to, is there a page number? Also, so the Housing Successor Fund,
Yeah.
the city of El Cerrito had a redevelopment agency, but it was dissolved and a few years ago. So the successor agency now manages the city's housing funding. And our community development department manages that program.
Okay. So is it so kind of what I got of this is the city helps pay for new development for low income housing? Is that kind of what it is?
In the past, the city did provide loans to help affordable housing development, correct?
Okay. That's great. I think that's great. Okay.
What is the for low income housing?
I don't know off the top of my head. I'd have to look into that. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
I noticed with along the housing, the progress reports are developing and support development of senior housing. Is that assisted living?
It's not assisted living. It's just age restriction, older than a certain age to live in that housing. Although at some point that development was considering also adding medical services on the bottom floor as just a service that's available to the seniors, but it's not assisted living.
Oh, okay. I was wondering because I thought I had heard something along those lines about adding medical, a clinic, I think it was, that you would think, so I thought, oh, this is assisted living. Okay.
That was the original concept, but that's no longer there, that medical service.
Other comments? So normally we ask the representative of El Cerrito to make a motion to accept the compliance checklist. We don't have a representative for El Cerrito, and I thought, well, we'll do the neighboring city, but we don't have a representative for Richmond. We don't have a representative for Hercules. So I would ask the advisory committee as a whole to entertain a motion to accept the City of El Cerrito's 2014 and 2015 growth management compliance checklist.
Move to recommend approval.
Who moved it? No, I can't. So you moved to accept it, and Larry, you seconded it. All right, so we have a motion on the floor to accept it and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? And so this will go on to the planning committee, and they will be discussing it at their regular meeting on May 3rd. So we would recommend that you be present for them in case they have any questions for you, and then it'll move on to the authority. Thank you so very much, and good luck to you. Next on our agenda is to review and comment on the draft 2017 Priority Development Area Investment and Growth Strategy. And we will be presented, Martin Engelman will make the presentation to the group. Thank you.
Hey, Martin, before you begin, it mentions in the agenda that there's an action item. Are we supposed to provide feedback to this report? Are we supposed to approve it, or what exactly is the action?
Good evening, Martin Engelman, Deputy Executive Director for Planning at the Contra Costa Transportation Authority. Good evening, Madam Chair. How's everybody doing tonight? Dennis, this is going to be an exciting meeting.
Thank you.
You're going to be at the edge of your seat the whole time.
Already out.
Yes. So you're an advisory committee, and this document that I'm going to talk about next, the Priority Development Investment and Growth Strategy, Priority Development Area, PDA, Investment and Growth Strategy, is going to the authority in May for their consideration. And you are welcome to and invited to comment on it either as individuals or as a committee. And if you individually want to comment, you can do that at the planning committee meeting or at the authority meeting coming up in May, and you'd have to come to the meeting and speak during public comment. You get 3 minutes. Or if tonight you see something in this report that you really like or don't like, you can, as a committee, agree to transmit your comment to the authority on this report, and Diane will help with the transmittal of that comment. But I'm not sure how far the CAC wants to get into this. This is actually a very detailed part of what we do, and it's kind of a new reporting instrument that came along a few years ago when MTC and ABAG decided they really wanted to start monitoring how these priority development areas are working. And for those of you who are new to the game, a priority development area is a specified area. It's got a minimum acre size, I think, of 100 acres. And it's required that local jurisdictions designate these areas for future growth, and not just any kind of growth, but really more of an urbanized, denser, high-density housing, near transit with transit frequency, and good mix of jobs and housing. The idea that is, if we can get future growth into these priority development areas, we could prevent sprawl, prevent the long in-commute from outside the Bay Area, from the Central Valley, and even maybe some people who live way out in East County and work in Oakland would decide, hey, let's move into a priority development area. There's a great little condo there or apartment, and it's near everything, and I could walk to work. And so it's really intended to mitigate and reverse the kind of sprawly development we've seen since after World War II, especially in Contra Costa.
So, Martin, I'm sorry, Martin.
Yeah.
So I think to answer your question, Daryl, as a committee, we're not here to make a motion to approve and or deny this report. The action is more of us commenting. Okay?
Yeah. So we put the full draft report in your packet. This is the 2017 update. I think this is the third time we've done this. There was an initial PDA strategy published in April 2013, and that focused on the process of allocating One Bay Area grant funds, which are funds that MTC makes available. They're federal funds that are made available to the counties, to the congestion management agencies, and we are encouraged to use those funds to help the PDAs develop. So we want to provide, focused transportation investments that might help transit develop in a PDA area, or something that helps make the streets friendlier to pedestrians and bicycles. The OBAG, so-called OBAG money is focused on that. The first update was in 2015, and this is the second update, 2017. And now we're moving into the second cycle of grant funding and really implementing a lot of the strategies that were developed as part of the definition of these so-called PDAs. So this report gives you new demographic projections for how many people are going to live and work in each of the PDAs. It lists all, I think we have 34 of them, all 34 of the PDAs, and each of you come from an individual jurisdiction. This is kind of an opportunity for you to introduce yourself to your PDAs and become more friendly with them, because you can actually see them each in this study. And the big part of this effort, aside from how we did the funding and where the money went, a big part of this effort is in Appendix B called the PDA portfolio. And so don't bother reading the whole thing, but for each of the sub areas, each of the PDAs are listed, and we describe them, and we have kind of an interesting graphic format here. It's called a spider diagram, and it looks like a spider web, but it shows how well the PDA is doing in terms of real estate market activity and potential, the infill plan area size and availability of opportunity sites, infill development, physical constraints, infrastructure requirements. You know, if they have to build all new roads and stuff, then there are a lot, and they can't get permits for that. There's a lot of barriers to that. Then that area wouldn't be shaded. So the more positive, if you go to look at one of these spider diagrams in in Appendix B, the more positive the situation is, the more grayed out the spider web is out to the very edges. So, for example, El Cerrito-San Pablo Avenue corridor, in terms of having supporting planning policies and entitlement process, all that is in place. So that entire area is shaded in the spider diagram. So, as I said, it's kind of a detailed report, but it's also a good opportunity for you to see how your particular area is doing and how your PDA is doing. And the overall plan for Contra Costa is actually that 70% of our future growth is going to go into these areas. And that's both housing. We can't control job growth as well, but at least the housing, 70% of the future housing growth is expected to go into these areas. And we're finally getting some information from ABAG on how well we're doing. We've asked them for a dashboard to tell us, you know, is the housing going into these PDAs or not? And they finally came up with their first so-called dashboard on this. And our goal is 70% goes into PDAs, but in the past year, only 25% of the new housing has been actually hitting the PDAs, been within the PDA border. So we're not, we're not on track to make 70%, but we will get that report year after year, and hopefully it'll improve. And then obviously, if you look at the housing affordability categories on page 2.2-145, you can see that in Contra Costa, this is just for the first couple of years of this so-called regional housing needs assessment cycle. So the totals aren't going to be anywhere near what we're trying to achieve, but we've done 3,000 permits so far for new houses, and only 3 of those were for very low income, and 22 of them were for low income, 215 for moderate, and close to 3,000 for above moderate. So the market is going where it wants to go, and that is above moderate housing is what builders can afford to build and want to build, and that's unfortunately resulting in a significant shortfall in achieving the goals for very low and moderate income. I think this is we're probably about a sixth of the way through this cycle, 2015 to 2023. And so the numbers for very low and low housing should be much, much higher than what's seen here. So I'll leave you with that much information, and I don't know if you had a chance to read the report or not, and I don't know if you have any comments, but if you do, now's the time to tell us what you think.
Dennis?
Martin, is there any intent to develop metrics to measure the performance of this PDA system? And it's not just getting houses into the middle of the PDA, it's what the consequence is of doing that. Reduce congestion, higher transit ridership, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Are there metrics being developed, and is there going to be measurement?
Well, that's an excellent question, because okay, if we get 70% of the housing into PDAs, and everybody still has their own car and drives alone to work, what have you accomplished except densifying and creating more traffic, and the traffic's worse? And it's actually worse for pedestrians to get around in the PDA area because there's so much traffic. So up to this point, all of the information is based upon academic studies and empirical data that you're very familiar with. And so, we have this study that says that if somebody lives in a PDA, instead of generating 10 vehicle trips per day, they may only generate 5 vehicle trips per day. So we know from empirical data and from academic studies that living in high-density, mixed-use areas near transit reduces the number of vehicle trips. Have we gone out and actually monitored that? To my knowledge, there has not been a specific analysis of PDAs to that extent yet, but it's a great idea, and it's something that sooner or later I think will happen. It requires counting every driveway, every garage, parking lot, driveway, cordoning off the area and figuring out who comes out and who comes in, who they are, and whether
Well, maybe
they
that's
live
a
there or
little
not.
far, but
So and also determining whether or not they use transit is a little difficult because you'd have to actually do a survey to ask them, because you can't always tell if they're walking to transit. You can't always tell that they're walking to transit. You can certainly count the vehicles.
Yeah. And with big data, you might be able to, and all of the technology, to do something in
Right.
that range. But I guess my main thrust is, this all sounds nice, but what is it accomplishing?
Right.
And so if we're not going to measure it in a way to know if it's accomplishing anything, then we're doing ourselves a disservice in putting a lot of emphasis on this without knowing if it did anything. So hopefully the powers that be will figure that out, and maybe it wouldn't be nice if the Contra Costa Transportation Authority pushed that notion. Let's figure out if this really does anything.
Right. Well, we've been pushing just for a dashboard on where does the housing go, and is it going into PDAs, and that alone was a big push, because it turns out for housing permits, I don't know, there's some issue with the addresses and the latitude, longitude, getting all that into GIS. They finally did figure it out, and so now we have a good dashboard on that. But as I said, it's only 25% going into PDAs, not 70%. And we have the same issue if we found that instead of the vehicle trips dropping by 30%, they only drop by 10%, then what have we accomplished? But certainly if you'd like to, have us carry that forward, we could.
And on that point,
I'm sorry, Linda had it. Yeah.
Martin, I have a question. I know we don't have control over this, but what about schools? If we're going to get a highly concentrated area of people, they're going to have families. And we don't have enough school buildings right now for the children in our area. And you're going to put in higher and higher concentration of families. And where are those kids going to go? So that's just something we
Yeah,
need to
it's-
think about.
It's all dumb luck. The new apartment here, Avalon, is on the south side of the BART tracks, so they're all in the Walnut Creek School District, and Walnut Creek loves to have new children at this point, so not a problem. But if it's a big development in a school district that's already crowded, then that's a big problem.
I'm sorry, but in my case, I live in San Ramon, and we already have an issue. And I'm very familiar with the 2 PDAs that are scheduled in here for San Ramon, which will cause an even larger issue. So, thank you.
Darren?
Yeah, so as I was going through this report, I saw a lot of it was simply on current status. And as you had mentioned, only 25% of the houses are going into the PDA. So I was wondering if they can add an additional section to this report, actually, which states something like an action plan on this is what you guys need to do if you want to continue receiving this type of funding. Because if people keep requesting funding, and we're telling them you need to use it in this way, but they're using it in various other methods, then it kind of defeats the purpose of even defining a PDA in the first place, So that's something that I would like to see, actually, an action plan stating that this is what you guys need to do if you want to continue to receive funding. And if you don't, what will be the penalties? No?
I wouldn't want to cross that bridge.
Really?
I wouldn't want to hold any. I wouldn't want to hold any of the cities responsible if their goals aren't met. That could be a real problem. I know I'm facing that in the weapons station.
Well, so I'm not talking about goals.
Well, the action plan would result in a goal.
If they don't meet the goal of very low housing, that's fine. But the goal is that, one of the things is that we want to try to concentrate the developments into particular areas and then hopefully reduce the amount of the amount of cars in that area, right? But if they start building out all across the city, that kind of defeats the purpose. So one of the goals is that it's a very high-level goal. It's just if you promise to use the money in these priority development areas, which the cities have all specified, then okay, we'll fund you. Otherwise,
Well, I don't think we can do that. I don't think you can go that far.
Dennis?
Just on the same point, I wouldn't want to penalize a city or a community until we knew that doing all of this actually had some effectiveness. And we don't know if it has any effectiveness now. People think it is, the academics think it might be, but they don't know either. So it isn't tested at this point. And I think it would be hard to penalize a community not knowing that you're getting what you were going after.
I know the weapons station really is going to cost 12,000 more units being built in Concord. We are moving, and the school district's aware of it. They're doing what they can right now, but it's going to be a big impact on Ignacio Valley High School, on some of the high schools around here, because Concord is the high school that's right in the middle of it. And that hasn't really been resolved, and it's kind of frightening because they keep saying, oh, they're going to meet this, they're going to do this, and then, we're not sure exactly what's going to happen when the dirt starts turning out there. And traffic. We are planning some contained rail between a couple of points of Bailey Road and the BART station, so there'll be kind of a loop between North Concord BART and out to Bailey Road. So that will be kind of a long loop where people can take transit into the BART station, but that doesn't stop them from having 2 cars. So, and you just don't say that's, can you imagine somebody coming along and saying, well, this is the only kind of car you can have? It's going to be really interesting when we get to that point, because right now, the roads that they're opening up into Concord are almost impacted by the traffic that goes over the hill to Pittsburgh and Antioch. I came over the hill the other way today. I'd been in Sacramento, and I went over Bailey Road. And the traffic coming toward me was end to end, and it was 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So I thought, I don't know what's going to happen. And I don't think that's something we can really resolve. I don't know how would we resolve it. And I've been working on this project for 10 years. And the question is still there, traffic. And so, but I had a question for you. You know, you quote figures from different cities and everything. What's your source of information for those? You know, housing and things like that.
We actually have a combination of sources. Some of the information comes from the Association of Bay Area Governments, and some of it we get directly from the local jurisdictions by calling them up and asking about it.
I was kind of curious because when we're establishing this kind of thing for the weapons station, and we've already established that 25% of the housing will be affordable to low income, and we bit the bullet for that. So I don't know what's going to happen with it, but some of these numbers just don't quite click for me as far as Concord. I think you're a little low. Thanks.
Other comments? Martin, I have a question. On Table 1, 2.2-13, I'm looking at households, and then I'm looking at employment and percentage growth. So that percentage growth for employment, that is, if I'm understanding that correctly, that's how much employment will grow in a specific area. There'll be jobs there.
Yes.
So I'm looking at El Cerrito, which has a potential of 165% growth, and there'll be a 12% increase in jobs in that area.
Yes.
I think they're going to go in their cars to look for a place to go and work. And I'm looking at Central Hercules, 449% growth in households and a 3% growth in employment in that area. Although South Richmond looks
Let
good.
me just say, if they have good transit service nearby, the fact that their job is not next door doesn't necessarily mean they're driving. So the idea is, if we have high density development, housing development near transit, that they will take transit to get to their job. But if you look at this San Pablo corridor, they're already, according to this table, there are already 4 times as many jobs in the corridor as there are households. Now, there's more than 1 worker per household, but if you figure 1.5 workers per household along that corridor right now, according to this table, there's about 1,200 employed residents for 3,600 jobs. And in the future, there'd be 3,000 employed residents for 4,000 jobs. So you're actually improving what's called jobs housing balance by getting more employed residents near these jobs. Whether or not, of course, they're economically congruent is another story. The wages and so forth are in question. But that San Pablo corridor seems to have a pretty healthy employment base and forecast.
I sit on the Business and Economic Development Committee for the Workforce Development Board here in Contra Costa County. I chair the committee and constantly being reminded that we don't have the workforce. We've got the jobs, but we don't have the people to that can fill the job. So we're looking at a labor crisis. Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I probably need to get with you at another time, but I'm looking at the Hillcrest EBART where it says the percentage of growth is 354,000%, yet the jobs are, employment is a minus 17%. I don't understand that. If you could help me understand that. And then I look at Brentwood, employment area is 1393%, and growth is 168%. So I guess
That's Oakley.
oh, excuse me, that is Oakley. Thank you. Brentwood has.
Definitely have a healthy percentage of household growth in the Hillcrest BART station. 345,000%.
So why is the
And then why the jobs go down, I don't know. I would have to get back to you on that.
Some areas are pure residential, others are primarily commercial and business. I mean, so.
Well, this would imply that the housing is displacing commercial areas in the Hillcrest EBART station, and I'd have to really check to see if that's the case, or whether this is just an anomaly. But I could definitely get back to you on that one.
well, actually, there's a housing growth.
Yeah, there's huge housing growth, but as you pointed out, the number of jobs goes down. So the big question, yeah, they're adding 3,500 units.
Patricia, you had a comment?
I had looked at the statistics of Antioch as well, so thank you for bringing that up. But I wanted to go a little bit farther. The fact that Brentwood has nothing, and this is what's happened to us. Martin, I met you a couple years ago out at the Byron Airport when we were talking about the airport connector, and I remember your position on that. And I just feel like, again, we almost don't exist in Byron, Discovery Bay. Brentwood luckily holds it on, but we don't even make, the paper here.
I think the problem in Brentwood has been that we don't meet the transit frequency criteria for a PDA.
Well, you're still on the map, and I understand things are booming out there in Brentwood.
Things are moving in Brentwood, and Byron, we still have 19,000 cars every day on Camino Diablo.
Yeah. So the reason Brentwood is not in this list is that Brentwood does not have any PDAs. PDAs have to be nominated by the local jurisdiction, and there are 3 cities in Contra Costa that have not adopted or not designated a PDA or requested designation of a PDA. Brentwood's one of them, Clayton's the second, and then the town of Danville at one point designated a PDA, but now they've retracted it. So there are 3 cities that aren't participating in this PDA effort.
I think the most likely candidate for a Brentwood PDA is going to be what's called Planning Area 1, which is generally the area right around what we think will be the location of the next EBART station, roughly where the Mokelumne Aqueduct goes underneath State Highway 4 and the bypass. They're just beginning to work on developing that specific plan.
And that's truly south of Brentwood and almost to Byron, am I correct?
No, that's between Lone Tree and Sand
Oh,
Creek.
okay.
On
All
what
right.
used to be called the bypass.
Okay.
But I think our problem up till now has been frequency of transit service, if that's one of the minimum criteria for a PDA. But that is being looked at as not only the transit station, starting with a large park and ride lot, but probably medium to high density housing projects clustered in that area, plus hopefully some employment development areas in the same general location. But that process is just starting within Brentwood.
But where you're talking about, Steve, is not just Brentwood, it's Oakley and Antioch all combined, am I correct?
Well,
On Lone Tree Way?
yeah, each city is responsible for nominating PDAs within its border, and I guess the county is responsible for your area.
Right, it's responsible for us, but who's doing it? I see.
Well, I think at that point, you probably need to contact Diane Burgess, the local supervisor.
Yes, thank you.
Other comments? I read the report. I figured if you mailed it to me, I might as well read it. And I found it educational and interesting. I too am very concerned about increased housing, and I didn't see anything on schools. That bothers me. The other thing that bothers me is, the concern about mitigating traffic. Yeah, you've got increased housing, you've got increased traffic. But and I was just curious about these numbers on Table 1 I didn't really understand them. And I appreciate what you put together, and I hope that all of us then review the PDAs for our particular municipality, city, and see what doesn't ring right. And then I would encourage you to attend the meeting and speak either on behalf of your city and or as a private citizen. I would. Any other comments?
Actually, one really quick thing.
Yes,
and
Daryl.
Comment on there's some talk about traffic. So, most of the projects that will be funded through this will be for streets and hopefully alleviating projects. Actually, I guess it was really to your point, where I don't see any metrics on how traffic is improved by funding these projects. Is that kind of what you were asking? Would you be able to produce those, the transportation would be able to produce those types of metrics? Even though it does state in here that ABAG is monitoring them, what exactly are they monitoring? Because it actually gives 4 points in which they monitor. But one of the things that I think is missing, definitely, I agree with you, is that, you don't even need to monitor it by the people, but at least monitor level of service. We monitor that now. So I'm curious to see, with all of these projects, how does it improve level of service past 2010 versus now?
Madam Chair, it's probably a little more complicated because you also have background growth. And so separating out what the PDA did for traffic congestion versus just background growth is not going to be all that easy. But it probably can be done. It just is complicated and expensive, probably, to collect the data and analyze it. But if we're going to spend a lot of money on all of these things, which it appears we are, we ought to know if it works.
And there seems to be money set aside for actually reviewing and having consultants look to see what what the progress is and comparing it to a baseline, so.
Yeah, but to that point, this has been updated 3 times now, and yet I still don't see anything. Right?
If I could comment, Madam Chair, regarding Darrell's question. So whenever a project is developed for a PDA, there's usually some kind of environmental impact report, and along with that comes a traffic study. And most of the cities require analysis of traffic and have standards for level of service. Recently, the California Environmental Quality Act was changed by SB 743, which says that level of service cannot be used as a findings of significance for an EIR for a project in a transit priority area or anywhere for that matter. So, but nonetheless, whenever these projects are evaluated, if you look at for example, the North Downtown Walnut Creek study area, there's an analysis, there is an EIR, and there is a traffic study, so you can actually see how much traffic the project generates and how many of the people that live or work there use transit. They show the split and everything. So you can see that. But in all cases, we're really talking about growth. So there's new vehicle trip traffic, there's new transit demand, there's new demand for sidewalks and bike trails and all that. So we're still adding population, adding jobs here, and we're not taking away. The Planned Bay Area, which we're going to talk about as the last item, they're not able to reduce the in-commute from outside the Bay region, but they do want to stop it in its tracks and keep it from growing further, and this is one of the ways they propose to keep it from growing further, all the traffic coming over Altamont Pass on 580 and so on, is to let people, provide them with an affordable place to live that's near transit or near a job center.
I just had one more comment. It's a different way of thinking for suburbia, and I think that this is why it's a little hard pill to swallow at times. We're not used to high-density housing. In suburbia, we like our little ranch homes on our half-acre lot or whatever, and the kids can play in the street. And I think it's, if we're going in this direction, we're going to need to educate people and do it quickly, I guess.
I'd like one more comment on a positive note. On page 2.2121, the 474-acre Rivertown waterfront in Antioch, I think that would be delightful. I grew up when Antioch downtown was beautiful and vibrant and a wonderful place to shop. And it would be wonderful if you do this. Thank you.
And along those notes, the waterfront in Pittsburgh is being developed too, and that looks great. It's very exciting, So, Millard?
Yeah, I just hope that in the development of Antioch that the whoever comes in and develop or the planners, that they start looking at, at least having businesses face the water and not look at each other. Also, I hope that they don't follow the model that Pittsburgh followed and put the cart before the horse. Build a nice town and don't think about how you're going to pay for it until after you build it. And lastly, I hope that in Antioch that we start looking at people to fill positions that actually have the experience of filling those positions, that have the experience of when you have a large influx of people coming in from different cities and different areas, that you hire people to facilitate housing and vetting of those coming in, to assist with keeping crime down, assuring that there are adequate opportunities for those people coming in, and that you use all of that to educate people, not just students, but people that come in that haven't been part of the system. There's a lot of people in Antioch that don't understand how city government works. In fact, in East County, East Contra Costa, period. And it appears to me that a lot of the programs that are developed, and again, it's me, that this is my opinion, a lot of the programs are developed to assure that we have a vibrant transportation system. But I think in doing so, the opportunities ought to be put together in that same way. Because I look at these reports and oftentimes we put down affordable housing, we put down opportunities, and they just don't exist, not in these reports. And you can't blame people when they live in areas where there's a lack of crime and there's a large influx of people. But I think that if we're going to represent people in this group, we need to look at ways that we can incorporate people into what the documents say, but come up with a plan that, again, vet people and have people that know how to assure that people coming in are adequately educated so that they don't, destroy what's there already. So I understand those things. And I hope what I said what I just said makes sense, because to me it does, but, thank you.
I have one thing. I've been in Concord for 50 years, and I've seen what Sun Valley did to downtown Concord. I've seen where we have recaptured the downtown now. That Todos Santos Plaza is a wonderful place to be on Thursday night. But it took a long time to turn around. And I've seen it out in Antioch. They go out and they build these shopping centers out there away from their downtown and desert the downtown. And something has got to be done. The planning, the city council's got to look at this and say they can't allow permits to go out and when they're just deserting. Why can't somebody come down into Antioch? And I go over there quite often and do something with that adorable downtown. It's got a lot of qualities, and it took a while for Concord to do that. And we finally wised up and realized that little downtown area was really a gem, and that we worked with it until it is what it is today. But it was in awful shape 20 years ago.
I do want to
Yes, Jim.
actually end on a better note than that. So I just wanted to mention that I really did love this read, actually. This is actually one of the reasons why I joined the Transportation Committee. I've always actually been very interested in PDAs, talking with a lot of the city councilmen. I knew what they were, but I didn't know where that information was held. So now I actually got the opportunity to read it. I thought this was a very fascinating read. I loved it. So thank you.
And I appreciate everyone's comments, and I'm sure that Martin has taken some notes and will be. I saw him writing. So, and that's really what he wanted from us, were comments and input as to this report. So I'm glad that we were able to do that. Thank you, everyone, and thank you to Martin. The next item on the agenda is the status report on the draft 2017 countywide transportation plan. And again, Martin, who is our Deputy Executive Chair, will give us an update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is a status report on the countywide plan. As you know, we have been trying to issue our countywide plan update for some time. The effort on this began in 2012. Our last plan was adopted in 2009, July 2009, and we try to update this plan every 4 or 5 years. It's called the Comprehensive Countywide Transportation Plan, and it's required under Measure J. The authority is asked to develop a countywide model to work with the local jurisdictions and the regional committees to develop and support what are called action plans for routes of regional significance. And we knit all of those action plans together into a countywide plan. So we started updating our action plans in 2012. There are actually 5 sub-areas, west, central, east, La Miranda, and Tri-Valley, that prepare action plans. And in there they identify their major routes and network of highways and arterials, and in some cases transit lines and trails. And then they set quantifiable objectives that they want to achieve for each of those routes. So all of the subregions had their action plans completed, at least to the draft level, by 2013. In 2014, we issued the 2009 update. That was August 2014. We went through a really significant public outreach process involving 5 regional workshops, a telephone town hall, an online engagement tool, stakeholder outreach toolkits, social media, mass mailings. And in the past plans, I'd say at the most we've gotten participation from maybe 500 individuals. Well, this last plan, through the magic of the internet, we got participation from 5,000 individuals, so we reached 10 times as many people. The plan was to be adopted in December of 2014, and by that time, MTC had changed its guidelines for how to do a countywide plan, so there were new kind of rules of the road. MTC adopted those in November of 2014 after we released the draft, so we weren't really well positioned to change the draft significantly at that point. And so in January 2015, the authority decided to postpone the 2014 CTP, to retool it so it fits the new MTC guidelines, and to start looking at a potential transportation expenditure plan, which we did during 2015. And you may recall we worked with an expenditure plan advisory committee. We identified 3 different investment plans. They were called A, B, and C, and we evaluated them quantitatively. And we brought the second draft of the plan a year later to the authority to release in December of 2015. And by that time, we were supposed to have a draft transportation expenditure plan. We didn't have that yet. And also this legislation I mentioned earlier, SB 743, had come around. And our action plans are kind of 180 degrees opposite of SB 743 in that they use a lot of level of service and a lot of delay-based measurements. We use what's called the delay index, which determines how much time it takes you to drive during peak hour versus off-peak. So, for example, one of the measurements out in East County is if you're on Highway 4, it should never take you more than 2 times as long to drive on Highway 4 during rush hour as it does at 3 o'clock in the morning. And many of you probably don't get to experience a steady 30 miles per hour on Highway 4. You might be doing 10 for all we know. So that's an example of a delay-based measurement, which SB 743 now says we really shouldn't use for environmental analysis. During 2016, we went through the TEP process. We went to the ballot in November, and as you know, Measure X did not pass. And after the dust settled from that effort, we started to once again bring forward the countywide plan. So the 2017 plan now is on track for adoption in September of this calendar year. And I wanted to put this on your agenda tonight so that you'd be aware that the plan is going to be released following the May 17th authority meeting. It'll be on the streets probably May 24th, the draft. And then following that, we're going to release a full EIR on the plan. There'll be a draft EIR on the plan on probably June 12th. So for your June meeting, I would suggest you put on the agenda a presentation from me on the draft 2017 CTP. It'll be out by then, and you all will have had a chance to download it and read it. We're not going to distribute a lot of shiny copies this time. It's going to be mostly do-it-yourself printing or read it on the screen. If you do want a copy, we will make you one. And comments are going to be due by July 28th. So if you look at this in June, you can formulate your comments. You could even, if you wanted to look at it again and finalize your comments at the last meeting in July, the last Wednesday in July, you'd have time to transmit them by the 28th in time for the authority to get them. So then during August, we will review all of the comments and come back to the authority in September with the final EIR. So that's kind of certification of the EIR and adoption of the final plan. So that's the schedule that we're running with at this point, and hope you'll participate, and hope I can present the plan to you in June at your June meeting.
So I would like to entertain a motion, please, to place the CTP plan on our agenda for our June 28th meeting for comments.
I so move.
Okay, I think Millard
Yes.
make the
I'll
motion
move it.
to move, and then second.
Make the motion to move.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second, and all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? So that will be on our agenda for the June 28th meeting, all right, Diane? Thank you.
So I have a quick question. With Measure X not passing, and I remember, I think there was a presentation out one of our last meetings, where, we've already kind of burned through most of the projects in Measure J, and most of the money as well. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, first of all, when is the money going to end? And then what's going to happen after that?
Are you asking Martin?
Oh, yeah.
So the Measure J runs 25 years from 2000. It began in 2010. It expires March 31st, 2034.
Yeah, but then we've accelerated a lot of the projects. So although it's planned to end then, because we've accelerated, we got everything done early, which is great. Because the reason why I ask is because my parents actually, they voted no for Measure X. And the reason that they voted no was because they saw that, hey, we're being taxed twice to have cent taxes. And I tried to explain to them, hey, we've accelerated all of our projects, but because they saw that, we're getting taxed twice for the same thing, they didn't want to do it. And so that's why I'm curious, because we've accelerated all of our projects and all of our timelines, and we're going to finish before the 2035, it may be difficult to get another measure kind of layered on top of Measure J. You know what I mean? So that's why I was wondering. what's going to happen?
So basically what happens, Darrell, is we've already spent all the money, and we have a debt service that we have to pay off by 2034. And there's a limit on how much debt we can carry. But our gross on Measure J is about, I think, $2.6 billion in year of expenditure dollars. And we've probably spent 80% of the project money that was available. We've got about 190 million left, I think, for projects. We're just doing another $100 million bond. We're completely bonded out. I think this is the last bond we're going to do. So between now and 2034, we will allocate the 18% funds for local streets and roads. We'll continue the transit and paratransit programs, which are a percentage of the gross revenues. And we will continue with our projects, try to leverage that remaining couple of $100 million as best we can to build as much as we can in the way of new transportation projects. But the lion's share of the expenditures are going to be to debt service on the bonds.
So, Martin, how are we looking at all the things that were in Measure X, which I know we're all here for a specific reason, and of course mine is the airport connector. Is that in the future or is it not?
Well, fortunately, we'll talk about that on the next item under the 2017 Regional Transportation Plan. Fortunately, the airport connector survived. It is in the draft Plan Bay Area 2040. It's scaled back from, I think it was a $76 million project to a $42 million project. It's a two-lane road with intersections, at-grade intersections at Vasco and Byron. And we have to look at how we can move forward with that. But it is on the map, so to speak, and eligible for state and federal funding by virtue of it having been included in the new RTP that MTC just released.
Thank you.
Other comments? So next on our agenda is the status report on the draft 2017 Regional Transportation Plan. And again, Martin Engelman, our Deputy Executive Chair, will be giving us an update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So every 4 years, MTC develops and issues its Regional Transportation Plan. The last one was adopted by them in July of 2013. This new one, called Plan Bay Area 2040, is expected to be adopted in July of 2017. And MTC just recently released the draft. April 1st, they released the draft. It's up on the MTC website. They're doing presentations. You can see the presentation in your packet that MTC is bringing around to the various congestion management agency. This presentation is actually tailored to Contra Costa, and we had Ken Kirky, the Director of Planning from MTC, come and present this to the authority at its last meeting. If you'd like to hear his presentation, you can go to our website and go to the meeting, and you can listen to it while you flip through these graphics and hear what he had to say. The plan is similar to the 2013 RTP in that it has the same horizon year, basically the same span of time. It goes from 2010 to 2040. this was initially intended to be just kind of a cleanup update of the last plan. It turned out to be a lot more involved with that than that, in that they're really focusing the whole plan on the affordable housing issue and the lack of housing. And so for the Bay region, the last plan had a forecast of 660,000 new homes in the Bay Area by 2040, and this plan ups that to 824,000. So there's a significant increase in the housing forecast. And jobs, of course, have been very, very robust. Job growth has been very robust. And the Bay region in the past 6 years has grown less than 1/10 of the households that the plan envisions, but more than half of the jobs. So, jobs are opening up, people are pouring in, and as you've all noticed, traffic is really on the uptick here, and that's reflected, I think, in the third slide. You can see the increase in congestion and delay, and also the increase in BART and Caltrain ridership. So there is going to be a public workshop. MTC is holding a public workshop on Wednesday, May 10th, across the street here at the Embassy Suites Hotel at 6:30, I believe. And you are encouraged to attend. And there will be stations there where you can go around and learn about the plan. And I think comments on the plan are due by June 1st. The EIR is now on the streets. It was just released. And so this committee probably, I don't think, is going to want to comment on the plan in general, but if you do have concerns, you can, as a committee, voice them, or again, if you want to comment individually on this plan as a CAC member, please come to the planning committee meeting or the authority meeting in May, and that's when we will be developing and transmitting our comments to MTC. So that concludes my report.
But you should you need to put your
The address again where the meeting is happening.
So the workshop is at the Embassy Suites Hotel next door here. Are you familiar with that? I don't know the address, but it's probably pretty close to our street number. We're 2999. I think I don't know what they are.
They're next door.
2998.
They're right next door.
And, yeah, first floor. Let me make sure I give you the right time here. The time for that meeting is 6:30. It starts.
And again, the date?
And that's on Wednesday, May 10th. 2 weeks from tonight.
Dennis?
Yes, the chart that shows the boom or bust, depending on your point of view, with the Caltrain ridership and BART ridership, the overall transit ridership performance is extraordinarily distressing. That it's actually, the transit ridership has gone down since 2000, despite billions spent on it. So I guess I would renew my question about effectiveness of expenditures of public funds. You would think with increasing delay, more and more people would want to take transit. Apparently they do in the Caltrain corridor and on the BART lines, but not anything else.
Well, keep in mind, Dennis, that's transit ridership per capita.
Right.
For the region. So the gross number, given the
The gross
population
number may go
increase,
up.
the gross number may go up, but I do know for a fact that over this time period, while BART ridership and Caltrain ridership have increased dramatically, the bus companies have not been faring so well. AC Transit has not been faring so well, nor Contra Costa County Connection. I think Tri-Delta is doing pretty well. But we have information on transit ridership that we could share with you if you're interested.
Well, I just think that it displays what has been the trend for decades in the United States, which is overall transit ridership as a percentage of total percentage of total trips. It keeps going down, despite huge investments in it. And so, I don't know. It just sort of suggests some rethinking.
Well, we just heard, to put more disconcerting news on top of that, there was a report on KCBS yesterday morning that a recent survey done in Silicon Valley, that most of these new job centers are suburban campuses, you know, if you go to work for Ask or Cisco or any of those places. And the percentage of people who drive alone is 86%. So, and there simply is no way to get there by transit.
So if you're looking at that campus and you're saying, I'm just going to pull a number, 10,000 people work there, what an opportunity for the bus company.
Or private shuttles.
Yeah.
Well, and that's proven. In Contra Costa County tried to do that, private bus shuttles, and it just didn't work. But
Yeah, so I'm actually curious, again, on your point. Yeah, ridership keeps going down, so I'm curious, like, if there are plans to think outside of the box. I remember reading an article a while ago, like states like Washington and cities like in Seattle, some of their transportation authorities, instead of focusing on public funding on buses and stuff like that, they instead subsidize companies. And they say, hey, if you want to create a program that will allow your people to work from home, to get the cars completely off it, they're willing to subsidize companies to kind of give them some money so that they can say, have all your people work from home and get cars off the road. What about some thinking like that? I don't know. What are you guys' thoughts on something like that?
well, I'm thinking as far as perhaps also something what Bishop Ranch does is they have bus routes directly to Bishop Ranch that actually stop at the different companies there. And so there is a meeting point, if you would, that would certainly get a lot of cars off the road. And I would not try to take a bus and BART and then another bus, and it takes me 2.5 hours to get to work. I don't care if I have to sit in traffic for 2 hours. I'd rather do that than transfer 3 different times.
But if you got to work from home, wouldn't that be better? I think most people here would love to work from home.
But Daryl, since really only a small percentage of people could do that, I think there would be an uproar if taxpayer-funded projects were used to basically keep people off the road. I mean, unless they had the bigger picture of, well, that will reduce the traffic for me. I think most people would not be quite that altruistic. I may be wrong, but.
And I think probably they would have the same type of thinking as your parents would. Well, wait a second. And now this tax is for transportation, and I'm paying a tax for keeping people at home. So we'd have probably a real push-pull on that.
Can I just say something? Because I work for a company that does support working from home, alternative. And it comes from the company. And one of the reasons is they're trying to save on office space because it's very, very expensive. Very expensive. So, I mean, I guess if you go out and try to sell it to companies, to large companies, and say, hey, we can save you some money if you give your employees alternate work schedules, I think that could be a potential. Absolutely. It's working for our company.
Then you have companies that build a campus. So what's that? That has bowling alleys and movie theaters and.
Well, they also have their own buses.
The other thing too in Seattle, Daryl, the buses are free. Yeah.
Oh, is that right?
Yes, all the buses downtown Seattle are free and have been for years, at least 20 years.
We have a free bus in Walnut Creek. Other comments?
I just like
Martin,
to. I was just going to say, I'd like to thank Martin. If he feels like I was yelling at him, I really wasn't. I think I wasn't. I really wasn't. I actually attended a council meeting last week where it was full, and the residents were up in arms over just a brand new development and the fact that the traffic was going to be worse than it already is, and there are no schools. So I've got that pretty well embedded in my head. So, but I did think this was an excellent, excellent report. And in all honesty, when I find things that are this good, I actually go to work and share it with my co-employees. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Martin. The reports were educational. I found them to be, to answer some questions that I really didn't think about certain points, and others, as I pointed out to you, I was confused. So thank you. Really appreciate you coming to us and giving us your take. Next on the agenda are committee reports, and we do have one from Stephen. Always. Thank you, Stephen. You're on.
Well, I don't have much to add other than what's written. I try to, as you can see, cover the highlights of the consent calendar, normally project-based stuff. And a lot of what was at the last two board meetings, Martin has just been presenting to us. The last board meeting, I do mention the bonding being approved, probably the last set, $100 million of bonds that will be put forth that will be our last allocation available under Measure J. Or Measure J. So outside of that, I could try to answer any questions.
So, Stephen,
Excuse me. One possible thing is we've just had a major state transportation funding package approved, and in fact, one of the items at the board meeting last week was a presentation of some of the parts of that program by Assembly Member Frazier. The other thing I might mention, which is not part of this report, I was just checking, there is a Senate constitutional amendment that is currently going through its committee process on the Senate side, the state Senate. I think it's, just a minute. Senate Constitutional Amendment 6, which seeks to reduce the 2/3 requirement for transportation votes to 55%. That's just gone through its first committee hearing and been voted out. I believe it has to be approved by 2/3 of each house. If it is, and it goes to the vote of the people, I think it only requires a majority vote of the people to amend the Constitution. So that is something that I'm sure the authority will be keeping an eye on as well.
So Stephen, you're doing a notation here of issuing a sales tax revenue bond for Measure J projects. Is that for the projects or to fund the debt?
Well, that would be new debt to fund projects. That will take us up to the limits of the debt that can be issued, given the current revenue projections. So again, the authority has used bond debt to accelerate projects. So it has tended to get the major projects promised in Measure J by and large well down the road to completion. And so on the project side, a lot of it's going to be debt service, plus whatever we can leverage from the state, and if the federal government ever comes up with an infrastructure package. I think the authority has been very, very successful at leveraging local money with regional, state, and federal money to get a lot of bang for the buck, a lot of bang for the local buck.
Other comments? So I do have a few comments here. I noticed in our minutes for the last meeting, we would like to have an activity that would tour eBart. I think, Patricia, you brought that up. Is there any movement on that? Are we going to be putting together a tour for eBart? You had expressed an interest in us having a tour at eBart.
I did, but I didn't know I was going to be putting it together.
No. I'm asking if we've moved forward. No, I don't want you to put it together.
Thank you.
So how would we do that, Diane?
Well, nothing has been scheduled as of yet.
Okay.
But I can make a note and tell Lindsay. I think she would be the one in charge of
Okay.
external affairs.
Okay, and then she would then get back to us, and we would let her know. I'm guessing that if a tour is put together for eBart, we're looking during business hours, not after. So that might impact some of us during our business day. And then also we need to have our own transportation to get to the eBart station. Once we're there, I would imagine that Lindsay would have some transportation for us to take us on the tour, and that the eBart project would do that too. But we would have to find our way there and our way home, and it would probably be, I'm guessing, late morning, early afternoon of a weekday. Okay, so we'll hear a little bit about that at another time.
So are you speaking of Hillcrest
Yes.
Station?
Yes, Hillcrest,
Oh, okay.
eBart. Mhm.
It would
Okay,
probably
I'll go
be we'd probably meet at the Hillcrest Park and Ride, which is adjacent to the eBart maintenance facility, which is north of the freeway and east of the Park and Ride.
The second comment I want to make is, please note that our meeting next month is an election meeting. So if any of you are interested in, typically we would have the co-chair move into the chair position. So if anybody's interested in the co-chair position, would you please let me know, contact me, send me just a half-page bullet points on what your interest is, and then I'm putting together an ad hoc committee which will consist of myself, the current co-chair, and Steve, who's the former chair, and we would review that and come back to the group and have you vote. Is that all right with everyone? Okay. And right, and if you would please, if that is your interest, if you would please send that to me within a week so I can have everything together, contact Mike and Steve and put together the report so I could have that for you and on the agenda. Okay. Other than that, I don't have anything else. Dennis?
Madam Chair, I just want to let the committee know that this will be my last meeting. I'm moving from Moraga. I'm moving into a PDA, by the way. So this will be my last meeting. And I'll be letting the authority know as well as the town of Moraga. I'll be sending an email out tomorrow.
So, Dennis, on behalf of the committee, I want to thank you so much for your attendance, for being present, and by that I mean your insights and your suggestions have been well received and very much appreciated. So good luck to you and thank you again. And I will have Diane, I'll create a letter and have Diane send it to you. I'll sign it on behalf of the committee, thanking you for your service. Anybody else leaving? Just a reminder, please, I was looking at the roster, and there's some of you who have, your term has come and gone, and so please send an email to your city council, to city clerk. Yes, to your city clerk, so that they can then turn around and send the email to Martin and Diane and keep you on board. So with that, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.